Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Today's deep dive takes us into the world of power, politics, and big money.
Mm-hmm.
You submitted a fascinating pile of articles about Jared Kushner,
Right.
former senior advisor to President Trump,
Yeah.
real estate mogul,
Uh-huh.
and now head of a controversial investment firm.
That's right.
Some people praise him as a peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Others call him, less flattering things.
Yeah, I've heard a few.
Is he a visionary deal maker or just another opportunist cashing in on connections?
That's a good question.
Are those Abraham Accords the real deal?
Right.
Or just a shiny distraction?
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the stark contrast in how people view him.
Okay.
To some, he's a brilliant strategist who gets things done.
Uh-huh.
To others, he's shrouded in suspicion, maybe even a grifter.
Wow.
This deep dive is all about untangling that narrative,
Okay.
separating fact from speculation,
Got it.
and trying to understand the why behind his actions.
I like it, the why.
Yeah.
So to do that, we'll need to look at everything.
Yeah.
Kushner's religious background,
Mm-hmm.
his family dynamics,
Of course.
those infamous Abraham Accords,
Right.
and, of course, the eyebrow-raising financial dealings of his firm, Affinity Partners.
Can't forget about that.
Did his net worth really jump to $800 million after leaving the White House?
It's a big number.
It is a big number.
Exactly. And remember, we're not here to pass judgment.
Okay.
We're simply dissecting the information you provided.
Right.
Looking for those aha moments that help us understand how this guy operates.
I love those aha moments.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Kushner comes from an Orthodox Jewish family,
Uh-huh.
a background that seems to have deeply influenced both his personal and professional life.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this plays out in his personal life, especially before marrying Ivanka Trump. Kushner converted to Judaism.
Right.
They keep kosher and observe Shabbat,
Wow.
even during their time in the White House.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Imagine trying to navigate that in such a high-pressure, always-on environment.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, talk about commitment.
Right?
His book, Breaking History, even mentions how Ivanka became a fantastic Shabbat cook.
Oh, wow.
But religion wasn't just a personal matter for Kushner in the White House.
Right.
It seems he also used it strategically,
Yeah,
especially with evangelical leaders.
that's right. He recognized the importance of the evangelical vote for his father-in-law's presidency.
Got it.
He even talks about Mike Pence
Okay.
reading like the Bible during the VP selection process,
Wow.
highlighting that evangelical connection,
Interesting.
and his choice for Middle East peace envoy,
Who was it?
David Friedman,
Okay.
a pro-Israel hawk
Mm-hmm.
with strong ties to the evangelical community.
Interesting. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
how much of his faith-based diplomacy was genuine belief
Mm-hmm.
versus calculated political strategy?
Right, especially when you consider the Abraham Accords.
Yeah, the Abraham
Gotcha.
Accords.
On the surface, it's a historic achievement, normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab nations,
Right.
but some critics see it as more show than substance.
More show than substance.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The Abraham Accords were undoubtedly a major focus
Boy,
during Kushner's time in the White House.
got it.
He presents himself as the key architect,
Mm-hmm.
sharing behind-the-scenes stories about tense negotiations,
Wow.
and even a napkin sketch from Netanyahu.
Oh, wait.
Explaining the political landscape in Israel.
Really?
Yeah, he really emphasizes that personal touch, that
Uh-huh.
ability to connect with people.
Okay, napkin diplomacy.
Right.
I love that.
It's interesting.
But let's talk about the why behind the Accords.
Uh-huh.
Some argue they were a way to bypass the Palestinian issue
Mm-hmm.
and solidify an alliance against Iran.
Right.
Others, like Kushner himself,
Mm-hmm.
insist it's about promoting peace
Yeah.
and economic prosperity in the region.
Kushner claims he secured the Accords by throwing out the traditional diplomatic playbook, focusing instead on personal relationships and shared economic interests.
Interesting.
He even describes it as succeeding with Plan C
Okay.
after two other approaches failed,
Wow.
which points to adaptability
Mm-hmm.
or maybe just stubbornness.
It could be.
But regardless of the motivation,
Right.
the long-term impact of these accords remains to be seen.
And then there's Affinity Partners,
Yes, affinity partners.
Kushner's investment firm,
Mm-hmm.
which has stirred up a whole other level of controversy.
Oh, yeah.
He raised billions,
Mm-hmm.
much of it from Saudi Arabia,
That's right.
just months after leaving the White House.
Yeah.
Coincidence? I think not.
You're hitting on a key point here.
Okay.
That $2 billion Saudi investment in particular,
Yeah,
raise a lot of eyebrows.
I bet.
Critics have accused him of everything from charging excessive management fees
Uh-huh.
to potentially violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Some even allege it's a quid pro quo
Really?
for favorable treatment of the Saudis during the Trump presidency.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It is.
So are we saying Kushner is straight up cashing in on his political connections?
Well,
Or is he just a really good businessman who happens to have powerful friends?
the Senate Finance Committee is actually investigating affinity partners right now.
Really?
So more information might come to light soon.
Okay.
But what's clear is that Kushner's business dealings blur the lines between personal gain
Right.
and public service.
Yeah,
It definitely raises questions about potential conflicts of interest.
for sure.
Is this visionary deal-making, or is something else going on here?
And this isn't the first time Kushner has been in hot water.
Oh, no.
Remember the Charlottesville white supremacist rally?
Oh, great.
His silence during that whole debacle, while his own family members were speaking out,
Yeah,
sparked a lot of criticism.
absolutely. His response, or lack thereof,
Right.
to Charlottesville was seen by many as a moral failing.
Oh, wow.
It raised questions about his values
Uh,
and whether he was truly committed to fighting hate and intolerance.
I see.
Was this a strategic move to avoid alienating a segment of his father-in-law's base? Or did it reveal something deeper about his character?
So we have this image of Kushner as this complex, almost enigmatic figure, a devout Orthodox Jew who leveraged evangelical support for political gain,
Right.
a negotiator who brokered peace deals, while some accuse him of favoring one fight over the other,
Right.
and a businessman whose ventures raise serious ethical concerns.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is a lot.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, let's take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll
Yeah.
try to untangle some of those threads.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's do it. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle
Yeah.
with some pieces missing.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand,
Mm-hmm.
you have these accomplishments,
Right.
like the Abraham Accords.
Yep.
But then you have these ethical questions swirling around his financial dealings.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile the two.
It is.
And that's precisely why understanding the motives and long-term impact of someone's actions is crucial.
Right.
Are the Abraham Accords a genuine step
Okay.
toward lasting peace?
Hmm.
Or are they a Band-Aid solution,
Wow.
masking deeper geopolitical strategies?
Mm-hmm.
Will affinity partners' investments truly benefit both sides?
Right.
Or will they further entangle the U.S.
Okay.
in complicated international relations?
Let's dig deeper into those Saudi investments for a second.
Okay.
Affinity Partners secured $2.5 billion
Wow.
from Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund,
Right.
which is chaired by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same prince implicated in the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
That connection is impossible to ignore.
Yeah.
It raises serious questions about Kushner's judgment
Okay.
and whether, for him, financial gains outweigh human rights considerations.
Right.
What message does it send
Hmm.
when you accept investments from a regime with such a questionable human rights record?
Wow.
Does this align with the values he claims to uphold?
And to make matters even more complicated,
Oh.
Kushner's firm hasn't generated any returns for its investors as of July 2024.
Really?
Despite charging significant management fees,
Mm-hmm.
they've deployed relatively little capital.
So they're just sitting on it.
Basically,
Does that sound like a savvy investor to you?
it's certainly raised some red flags.
Yeah.
This lack of returns,
Yeah.
coupled with those hefty fees,
Mm-hmm.
really fuels that narrative of Kushner as someone leveraging his connections for personal enrichment.
I can see that.
Is this a case of inexperience, bad luck,
Okay.
or something more calculated?
It's hard to say.
And there have been accusations that Affinity Partners is structured in a way
Uh-huh.
to avoid federal disclosure requirements.
Interesting.
It's like they're operating in this murky gray area,
Yeah.
benefiting from Kushner's former government position
Right.
without the usual transparency expected of public officials.
That's a valid concern.
It is.
Senator Ron Wyden is actually leading an investigation
He is.
into Affinity Partners' financial structure
Okay.
and dealings with foreign governments.
Why?
He's concerned that the firm might be a way to funnel money to Trump officials
Oh, wow.
without proper disclosure.
That's not good.
If that's true,
Uh-huh.
it raises serious questions about the legality of the whole operation.
Okay, so we've established that Kushner is a polarizing figure,
Yeah, definitely.
to say the least.
For sure.
But how does this all fit into the bigger picture?
It's a good question.
What's his legacy going to be?
Right.
Is he going to be remembered as a peacemaker or a profiteer, a visionary, or just a really good con man?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
It's still too early to say for sure.
Yeah.
Only time will tell if the Abraham Accords genuinely contribute to peace and stability in the Middle East. And we'll have to wait and see if Affinity Partners is a legitimate business venture
Right.
or just a way for Kushner to enrich himself.
But one thing's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Kushner isn't going away anytime soon.
I don't think so.
He remains deeply involved in various ventures,
Oh, yeah.
including real estate,
Mm-hmm.
tech investments,
Okay.
and even a media company.
Wow. He's busy?
He is.
He's clearly ambitious
Yeah.
and wants to leave his mark on the world.
I see.
But what kind of mark will that be?
And that brings us to a crucial question about the future of power and influence.
Okay.
In a world where wealth, politics, and global connections are so intertwined,
Mm-hmm.
how do we hold figures like Kushner accountable?
That's the question.
How do we separate genuine visionaries from those who are simply out for themselves?
It's not easy.
You've brought up some really thought-provoking points.
Thank you.
So for someone trying to figure out if Kushner is the real deal
Mm-hmm.
or just playing everyone,
Right.
what should they be paying attention to?
Good question.
What are the telltale signs?
I think it's crucial to look beyond the carefully crafted public image and the headlines,
Okay.
scrutinize the motivations behind his actions,
Yeah.
question the long-term consequences of his deals, both in the political arena and the financial world.
Right.
Look at his track record,
Okay.
his associates,
Uh-huh.
and whether his actions match his words.
Don't just accept the narrative he presents in his book or in interviews.
Exactly.
Dig deeper.
Yes.
Look for independent analysis
Mm.
and consider multiple perspectives.
Right.
Does he genuinely care about making a positive impact,
Mm-hmm.
or is he more interested in personal gain?
That's what you have to figure out,
Does he operate with transparency and integrity,
right?
or does he prefer to work in the shadows?
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
Yeah.
Is he truly serving the public good,
Mm-hmm.
or is he ultimately serving his own interests?
Right.
Does he prioritize ethical considerations, or does profit always come first?
These are essential questions to ask about anyone in a position of power,
I agree.
but especially someone like Kushner, whose
Right.
dealings often straddle the line between public service and private enterprise.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
figuring out if someone is a visionary or a con artist requires a critical eye
Mm-hmm.
and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right.
It's about connecting the dots,
Mm-hmm.
looking for patterns,
Yeah.
and being wary of anyone who seems too good to be true.
Especially when you're dealing with someone who operates at the intersection of immense wealth,
Right.
political power, and global influence.
The lot?
The stakes are high,
Yeah.
and the potential for manipulation is significant.
Right. And we have to consider the larger implications of his actions.
Yes, definitely.
Do his business dealings compromise U.S. interests abroad?
It's a valid question.
Does his silence in the face of injustice speak louder than his words about peace? These aren't just abstract questions.
Right.
They have real-world consequences.
These are questions you have to grapple with
Okay.
as you form your own opinion of Jared Kushner.
I will.
It's not a simple black and white situation.
No, it's not.
And that's precisely what makes it so fascinating. It's
Right.
so important to understand.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about Kushner's background,
We have.
his ventures,
Yeah.
the controversies,
Right.
and the lingering questions.
Lots of questions.
But there's one incident that really illustrates this tension
Oh, okay.
between his faith,
Mm-hmm.
his actions,
Right.
and the accusations of hypocrisy leveled against him.
I see.
It sheds light on those questions of character and integrity we were just talking about.
You're talking about his family's reaction to his silence during the Charlottesville rally, right?
Exactly.
That's a crucial piece of the puzzle when trying to understand his values
Okay.
and how they translate into action
Yeah.
or inaction in this case.
So in 2017, white supremacists marched through Charlottesville, chanting, "Jews will not replace us,"
Wow.
and ultimately sparking violence that led to the death of a counter-protester.
It was a terrible tragedy.
It was.
Trump's response was widely criticized for equivocating and blaming both sides.
Yes, and while many public figures,
Yeah.
including members of Trump's own administration,
Right.
denounced the racism and violence,
Yeah.
Kushner remained conspicuously silent.
Really?
Given his Jewish faith and his family's history with the Holocaust, this silence was particularly jarring for many people.
I can imagine.
And here's the kicker.
What's that?
Kushner's own family members called him out for it.
Wow, really?
His cousin, Mark Kushner,
Yeah.
wrote on Facebook, "It is our responsibility as the next generation to speak up against hate."
Huh.
Clearly aiming that statement at Jared.
It sounds like it.
Another cousin, Jacob Shoulder,
Okay.
was even more blunt,
What did he say?
saying, "Responsible campaign manager should have known better," adding that even Joseph Kushner would have had the street smarts to figure that one out while living on boiled potatoes in the forest.
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is. Talk about a family feud.
Right.
And remember, this is coming from fellow Jewish family members
Yeah.
who understand the horrors of the Holocaust firsthand.
Of course.
They clearly felt that Kushner's silence was a betrayal of his heritage and his values.
It really highlights the dissonance between Kushner invoking his grandparents' Holocaust survival story during the campaign
Right.
and then staying silent when faced with a blatant display of anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder,
Oh, yeah.
was he truly committed to fighting hate?
Mm.
Or was invoking the Holocaust just a convenient political tactic?
It's a good question.
And if he was so committed to peace in the Middle East,
Right.
why didn't he speak out against white supremacy at home?
It makes you wonder if he was trying to avoid alienating a certain segment of Trump's base,
Mm-hmm.
or if he was simply prioritizing his political ambitions over taking a moral stand.
Right.
It's a tough question.
It is.
And unfortunately, we don't have clear answers from Kushner himself.
Oh, really?
He and Ivanka were reportedly on vacation during the Charlottesville rally
Oh, wow.
and declined to comment on the situation publicly.
So yet again, we're left with more questions than answers.
We are.
This whole deep dive has been a roller coaster ride through power, politics,
That's right.
faith,
Yeah,
and some seriously questionable ethics.
for sure.
It's a prime example of how charisma and controversy can collide,
Okay.
making it incredibly difficult to separate genuine intention from calculated self-interest.
And that's the thing about figures like Jared Kushner.
Yeah.
They operate in this complex web of influence where it's difficult to discern their true motivations.
It is.
Are they driven by a genuine desire to make the world a better place?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they masterfully playing the game
Right.
to amass more wealth and power for themselves?
It's up to each of us to evaluate the evidence,
Okay.
consider the different perspectives, and ultimately decide where we stand on the grifter or gifted spectrum.
I like that grifter or gifted.
Yeah.
In a world where the lines between visionaries and con artists are increasingly blurred,
Uh-huh.
it's more important than ever to be discerning,
Right.
to ask the right questions,
Yeah.
and to be wary of anyone who seems too good to be true.
Yeah, it really is a head-scratcher.
It is.
On one hand, we have this image of Kushner as a peacemaker,
Right.
someone who can bridge divides and bring people together.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at his business dealings,
Yeah.
his silence on key issues, and it's hard not to question his motives and his ethics.
And that's the challenge, isn't it?
It is.
When someone operates in such a high-stakes environment,
Right.
surrounded by wealth and power,
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult to separate the person from the persona.
I see.
Are they genuinely trying to make a difference?
Mm.
Or are they just playing a role to advance their own interests?
So how do we,
Yeah.
as observers,
Uh.
try to figure that out? It's tough.
What are the red flags?
Right.
The telltale signs that someone might be more con artist than visionary?
I think one of the biggest red flags is a lack of transparency.
Okay.
When someone is constantly operating in secrecy,
Uh-huh.
hiding their dealings,
Right.
avoiding accountability,
Mm-hmm.
that's a sign that something might be amiss.
Okay.
True visionaries are usually open about their methods,
I see.
their motivations, and their goals.
Got it.
They're not afraid to be scrutinized because they believe in what they're doing.
Makes sense. And we've seen that lack of transparency with Kushner,
We have.
especially with affinity partners.
Yeah.
The way the firm is structured,
Mm-hmm.
the lack of disclosure about its investors and its investments,
Yeah.
it all raises a lot of questions.
Exactly. And another red flag is a pattern of self-dealing,
Okay.
where someone consistently puts their own interests ahead of the common good.
Got it.
If their actions seem primarily motivated by personal gain, whether it's financial profit or political power,
Right.
that's a sign that they might not be as altruistic as they present themselves.
Interesting. So, looking at Kushner's track record,
Yeah.
we see that he's made a lot of money,
Yeah.
gained a lot of influence,
Mm.
but has he actually made the world a better place?
Good question.
Have his actions truly benefited anyone other than himself and his inner circle?
Those are tough questions to answer.
They are. And that's why it's so important to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
to examine the long-term consequences of someone's actions,
Right.
not just the immediate outcomes.
Uh-huh.
A true visionary's impact should be lasting and positive,
Exactly.
not just fleeting and self-serving.
And we can't forget about the power of charisma.
Right, the power of charisma.
A charismatic leader can be incredibly persuasive.
Yeah,
Even if their ideas are flawed or their intentions are questionable,
interesting.
they can sweep people up in their vision,
Yeah.
making it hard to see the cracks in their facade.
That's true. Charisma can be a powerful tool for good,
It can.
but it can also be used to manipulate and deceive.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be critical thinkers,
Okay.
to question what we hear,
Mm-hmm.
and to not be swayed solely by someone's charm or their ability to tell a good story.
It's like we have to train ourselves to be skeptical,
Yeah.
to look for evidence,
Uh-huh.
to not just take things at face value.
Right, especially in today's world,
It is a crazy world.
where information is so readily available,
Right.
but also so easily manipulated.
Exactly. We have to be our own fact checkers,
We do.
our own truth seekers. We have to be willing to dig deeper,
Right.
to ask the uncomfortable questions,
Yeah.
and to challenge those in power,
Mm-hmm.
even if they seem charming or well-intentioned.
So circling back to Jared Kushner.
Okay, Jared Kushner.
Hmm.
Where does he fall on this spectrum?
Yeah, is he a visionary who's been unfairly maligned?
Mm.
Or is he a shrewd operator who's managed to pull the wool over a lot of people's eyes? That's the question we've been grappling with throughout this deep dive.
It is.
And honestly, there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
The evidence is complex,
Right.
the interpretations are varied, and the jury is still out on his ultimate legacy.
But I think this exploration has been valuable.
I agree.
Even if we don't have a definitive conclusion,
Yeah.
it's helped us understand the challenges of discerning between genuine visionaries
Mm-hmm.
and those who are simply adept at self-promotion.
Right.
And it's given us a framework for evaluating those in power, for asking the right questions,
Yeah.
and for holding them accountable.
I agree. And ultimately, that's what's most important.
It is?
Regardless of whether we label someone a grifter or gifted,
Mm.
the process of critical thinking,
Right.
of questioning motives and examining impacts,
Mhm.
is essential for navigating the complexities of power and influence in the 21st century.
For sure. So for you listening, as you continue your own deep dive into the world of Jared Kushner,
Yes.
remember to stay curious,
Stay curious.
stay skeptical,
Stay skeptical.
and never stop asking those tough questions.
That's right.
Who knows what you might discover?
You never know.